The night was quiet on Station Orbis 9, a small outpost floating above a dusty alien planet. The long metal corridors echoed with silence. Most crew members had already gone to sleep. Only one room still had its lights on, a small cabin near the edge of the station. Inside, Jake Carter, a human and former soldier, sat alone on his bunk. He had a tired look on his face. His hands were rough and dirty from a long day fixing broken pipes. Outside his small window, stars twinkled, and the big blue moon cast a pale glow into the room. Jake looked at the picture on the wall, an old photo of Earth. He missed home, but this outpost was where he worked now. Quiet, lonely, and safe. Or so he thought. Suddenly, his door opened slowly with a soft hiss. Jake turned sharply. He hadn't heard footsteps, no knock, nothing. And then, she stepped in. A beautiful alien girl, young and glowing under the moonlight. Her skin was smooth and light purple, her long silver hair flowing behind her like silk. Her big eyes shimmered and her face looked worried, almost scared. She didn't say anything for a second. She stood still at the door, holding something close to her chest. It was a soft white blanket. Jake stood up. "Leary?" he said in surprise. "Are you okay?" The girl blinked and then slowly stepped forward. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Can I sleep next to you tonight, human?" Jake didn't move. His heart skipped a beat. No one had ever asked him something like that. Not on this cold space rock, are you scared?" he asked carefully. Leary nodded slowly. "Yes, I had bad dreams again. The lights outside, they remind me of the battle. I feel alone." Jake remembered. 2 weeks ago, he helped rescue Leary and a few other survivors from a pirate attack on her planet. Since then, she stayed on the station under special care, but she hardly talked. She kept to herself. Until now. Jake looked at her. Her eyes were wide, not in fear of him, but like she trusted him. Like she felt safer near him. He nodded. "Okay. Yeah, come in." Leary smiled just a little shyly. She walked inside and sat down at the edge of the bed. Her movements were slow, almost careful, as if she was afraid to break something. She pulled the blanket around her shoulders. Jake sat on the floor beside the bed. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable. "You don't have to sit on the ground," she said quietly. "I don't want to scare you," he replied. "You don't scare me," she whispered. There was silence between them, just the hum of the station and the soft breathing of two souls who barely knew each other, but somehow understood. Jake cleared his throat. "Do you have those nightmares often?" Larry nodded again. "Every night. I see fire, screams. My mother, calling me." She paused, voice cracking. "But when I saw your face in the dream tonight, the fire stopped." Jake felt something deep in his chest, a strange warmth. He didn't know what to say. "You saved us," she said. "You didn't have to, but you did." Jake looked away. "It was nothing." "It was everything," Larry whispered. For a moment the room felt calm, safe, like they were both hiding from the outside world together. Suddenly a soft noise came from the hallway. A faint click, like someone watching. Jake quickly turned, his head toward the door. "Did you hear that?" he asked. Leary's eyes widened. She clutched the blanket tighter. "Yes." Jake stood up slowly and walked to the door. It was still shut. He pressed the control panel, but no one was outside. Just empty halls. And shadows. When he turned back, Leary was lying on the bed, eyes closed, her face finally peaceful. Jake sat, back on the floor, still alert. He didn't know why, but something didn't feel right. And as he looked at the sleeping alien girl, he knew one thing for sure. This night was only the beginning. The lights were dim in Jake's room. Outside the window, the moonlight had faded, replaced by the soft glow of a nearby gas cloud. Silence wrapped the space like a blanket. But inside the small room, two hearts beat quietly. Jake hadn't slept. He sat near the edge of the bed, watching Leary sleep peacefully for the first time in days. Her silver hair shimmered against the blanket. Her face looked calm, no fear, no pain. Just peace. But Jake's mind was not calm. Who opened the door earlier? Why was someone watching them? He stood slowly and walked to the corner of the room where he kept his old military bag. He opened it, pulled out a small handheld scanner and pointed it at the door panel. There it was. A silent access ping, recorded just 5 minutes before Leary had arrived. Someone had used a bypass code. Damn. Jake whispered to himself. Someone's tracking her. Before he could think more, a voice spoke behind him, soft and tired. You didn't sleep either? Jake turned. Leary was sitting up now, her eyes open, looking at him. No, he said. Too many thoughts. Leary nodded slowly. Me too. She looked around, then back at him. Do you ever have nightmares, Jake? He took a moment before answering. Yeah. Not as often now. But they come back sometimes. What do you see? She asked, almost in a whisper. Jake sat down across from her. I see my old unit. I see the day I failed them. The day I ran instead of fighting. Leary tilted her head. But you saved me. You're brave. Jake gave a small smile. Not always. I just try to do what feels right. Leary was quiet for a while, then said something unexpected. I lied before. Jake's eyes narrowed slightly. About what? Leary looked down at her hands. I didn't come to your room because of nightmares, not only that. She looked up into his eyes. I came because I think they're coming for me. Jake's chest tightened. Who? She hesitated, then said the word like it burned on her tongue. The collectors. Jake froze. That name was whispered across many sectors, an unknown group that hunted rare alien species and special individuals. Some said they worked for governments, some said they were worse, private hunters who sold people. What do they want from you? Jake asked, voice low and sharp. Leary moved her hand and lifted a small crystal necklace from under her top. It glowed faintly with blue light. I carry my people's last memory crystal, she said. Inside it are songs, maps, and secrets. My father gave it to me before he died. They want it, but they can't take it while I live. Jake leaned forward. You mean they have to? She nodded. Kill me, yes. That's why I came to you. Jake looked at her, heart heavy. She wasn't just some refugee. She was a target, a symbol, maybe more. And then Leary whispered something even more haunting. One of them is already here, on this station. Jake stood up fast. What? How do you know? She closed her eyes. I felt him. My kind, we feel things. Energy, emotion. When I passed by the storage wing yesterday, I felt darkness. A mind full of hunger, watching, waiting. Jake clenched his jaw. Then we need to get off this station. Leary shook her head. If we run, they'll chase us. If we hide, they'll find us. I came to you because I thought maybe you would fight with me. Jake stared at her. She was young, scared, but brave. And she had come to him. Out of everyone. She trusted him. He nodded. I'll fight with you. Leary smiled gently, and for the first time, she looked like someone who had hope. Suddenly, the station lights flickered. Both of them turned their heads. Jake grabbed his scanner again. A second access ping just came in, this time from the hallway outside his door. They're close, he said. Stay behind me. As Jake moved to the door with a weapon in hand and Leary standing behind him holding the glowing crystal, the shadows outside began to move, and deep in the hallway, a whisper echoed. The metal floor felt cold under Jake's boots as he stood by the door, weapon in hand. Leary stood behind him, her small body wrapped in the white blanket, her glowing eyes filled with fear, but also trust. Outside the door, everything was silent. Again, too silent. Jake slowly opened the door, aiming down the hallway. Nothing. Just empty lights flickering and the usual hum of the station. But he knew better. Someone had been there. Watching. Waiting. He stepped back inside and locked the door again. "They're testing us," he said. "They want to see if we're afraid." Leary nodded. "They feed on fear." Jake turned to her. "You said one of them is already on the station. Do you know who it is?" Leary looked down, quiet for a moment. "Yes," she whispered. "But I can't say yet, I'm not sure." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Then how do we stop them?" Leary walked over to the bed and slowly sat down, holding the crystal around her neck. She looked at Jake with a serious expression. "There's something I didn't tell you before," she said. "About who I am." Jake folded his arms. "Go on." "My name isn't just Lyrie," she said softly. "It's Lyrie Thane of Vasari. I'm the last daughter of the Vasari bloodline, a royal family on my homeworld." Jake's eyes widened. "You're a princess?" She nodded. "My family was destroyed during the raid. My father gave me the memory crystal and told me to run. Inside this crystal is more than just stories. It holds the location of our people's hidden vault. Technology, medicine, knowledge, things the galaxy would kill for." Jake sat down, stunned. "And the collectors know this?" "They've known for years. They wiped out my family trying to find it. I'm the last one who holds the code to open it. That's why they're after me." Jake looked at her, finally, understanding the full weight of her fear. "You've been carrying all this alone," he said. She nodded slowly. "Until I met you." Jake stared at the crystal around her neck. It glowed faintly, but he felt something from it. Like warmth. A pulse, maybe even a voice. It wasn't just a tool. It was alive somehow. "What do we do now?" Jake asked. Leary stood and walked to the window. She looked out at the stars, the vast silence of space stretching beyond. "I want to unlock the vault," she said. "I want to help my people, but I can't do it alone." "You trust me with this?" Jake asked. She turned and smiled, a soft, sad smile. "You protected me without knowing who I was. That means more than you understand." Jake opened his mouth to reply, but suddenly, boom, a loud explosion shook the station. Alarms began to blare. "Emergency breach detected," said the station's AI voice. "Hull compromised in engineering deck. Intruder alert." Jake jumped up and pulled on his jacket. "They're here," Lyrie whispered. "They've found me." He looked at her. "We have to move. Now." Jake opened the floor panel under his bed and pulled out an old maintenance map of the station. He traced his finger across the lines. "There's a tunnel through the service vents. It leads to the lower cargo bay. We can hide there." She nodded. Jake grabbed her hand and pulled her close. "Stay with me. No matter what." "I will," she whispered. They ran out of the room into the dark hallway. The lights flashed red. Sirens echoed through the corridors. Behind them, a shadow moved, and far away. Something inhuman whispered again. The hallway shook again as a second explosion blasted through the lower decks. Jake held Leary's hand tightly as they ran. The red emergency lights flashed on and off, casting shadows on the walls. The station's alarm screamed around them like a wounded animal. "Hull breach on engineering deck, life support systems at 63%. The robotic voice called out again. They didn't stop. Jake's old soldier instincts had returned. His eyes scanned every corner, every vent, every door. But this time, it wasn't just about staying alive. It was about keeping her safe. Leary struggled to keep up. She wasn't trained for this kind of escape. Her soft breath trembled as they turned down a dark maintenance tunnel. Dust and wires hung from the ceiling. The floor creaked with every step. They ducked into a narrow space behind a locked supply room. Jake knelt beside her. "You okay?" he whispered. She nodded, but her eyes were wide with fear. "Stay here. I'll check ahead." "No," she said quickly. grabbing his arm. They want to separate us. That's how they hunt, in the dark, alone. Jake paused. Then he nodded. We stay together. Suddenly, footsteps, heavy ones, coming closer. Jake raised his plasma pistol and turned off the safety. He pressed his back against the wall. Lyrie crouched behind him, holding the glowing crystal tightly. A figure appeared at the end of the hall. Not human, tall, armor like black stone, a mask that looked like a metal skull. Its eyes glowed red. A collector. Jake raised his weapon and fired. The first shot hit the creature in the shoulder. It barely flinched. The second shot hit its leg, slowed it. Then Jake grabbed Lyrie's hand again. Run! They dashed down the corridor. The creature followed with fast, pounding steps. Jake spotted a vent just ahead. He yanked it open and shoved Lyrie inside first. Hurry! She crawled in. Jake followed and pulled the panel shut behind him just as the creature reached the hallway. In the narrow vent, every breath was loud. Dust filled the air. Metal groaned under their movement. They crawled in silence for several minutes. Finally, they dropped down into an old storage bay, dark and cold, full of forgotten crates. Jake looked around, panting. We'll be safe here. For a moment, Lyrie knelt beside one of the crates and placed her hand on the glowing crystal. A hologram burst from it. Jake stepped back in shock. It was a man, tall, with silver skin and royal robes. His voice was deep, kind, and sad. If you are seeing this, my daughter, then I am gone. You carry the last hope of our people. Lyrie gasped. Father, the hologram continued. The Vault of Vessery holds the power to rebuild our world, but in the wrong hands it could destroy thousands. Trust no one, except the one who protects you with no reward. Jake looked at Lyrie, stunned. She looked back at him, her eyes full of emotion. This is why I needed you, she said softly. Suddenly, boom! The wall behind them cracked. The collector had found them. Jake aimed his weapon again. Go through the side hatch, he yelled. But go! Lyrie ran toward the side tunnel. The collector charged at Jake. Jake fired shot after shot, each one slowing the creature. Finally, he threw a shock grenade, blinding it just long enough to escape. He dove through the hatch and slammed it shut behind him. Darkness again, only their breathing, and the soft glow of the memory crystal between them. Jake leaned back against the wall. We won't survive another attack like that, he said. Lyrie wiped a tear from her cheek. Then we fight together. Until the end. Jake looked at her. For the first time, she didn't look scared. She looked like a warrior, and deep in his chest, he felt something strange. Not fear. Purpose. The side tunnel was narrow and cold. Dust fell from the old metal ceiling as Jake and Lyrie moved deeper into the forgotten parts of the station. These lower sections hadn't been used in years. The lights were broken, and thick pipes ran along, the walls like veins. Jake's shoulder ached from the last blast, but he didn't stop. Lyrie followed close behind, holding the memory crystal tight against her chest. Where are we going? She asked. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. There's a place I found during a routine check 6 months ago. It's not on any map. Some kind of sealed lab. I didn't open it, but now I think we should. Lyrie nodded. If it's hidden, it might help us hide too. They reached a large, rusted door half buried in old crates. The keypad was cracked, but Jake pulled out his portable toolkit and started rewiring the panel. Lyrie stood behind him, her eyes scanning the shadows. She could feel it. They were not alone. Click. The door hissed open. Inside, a blast of cold air rushed out. The lab was large and dark, but as they stepped inside, faint blue lights came on along the walls. Dust floated in the air. Glass tubes lined the walls, some empty, some still glowing. This place, Lyrie whispered. It's ancient. Jake moved slowly, searching the control panels. He wiped off one screen and activated the system. Welcome back, Dr. Harvin, the AI voice said. Jake frowned. Harvin? I'm not. Wait, that's the name of the scientist who designed this station. Larry walked to the center of the room. There was a pedestal, smooth silver and marked with alien symbols. She placed her crystal on top. The room shook slightly. A hidden door in the floor opened slowly, revealing a second chamber beneath them. Jake and Leary climbed down a narrow ladder into the lower room, and what they saw made both of them freeze. There in the center of the chamber stood a tall glass pillar, glowing from inside. Suspended within it was a floating memory orb, twice the size of Leary's crystal, pulsing like a heartbeat. The AI spoke again. Vault code recognized. Welcome, daughter of Vasari. You have reached the heart of your people's legacy. Leary's hands trembled. This is it, she whispered. This is the core. My father spoke of it in bedtime stories, a place where the Vasari stored their deepest knowledge and their greatest weapon. Jake looked at her. Weapon? She nodded. Not a bomb, not a gun, something more powerful, a living knowledge. It's called the Soulfire Protocol. It can heal entire planets or destroy them. Jake stepped back. And the collectors want this? Larry nodded. If they get this, they'll control thousands of systems. That's why they must not take me alive. Jake clenched his fists. We won't let that happen. Suddenly, bang! The door above slammed shut. Lights flickered. Jake ran up the ladder and pressed against the hatch. Locked. They found us. Leary, touch the orb. It pulsed brighter. Jake, I can activate it, but I need you to protect me while I do. How long? 5 minutes. Jake checked his pistol. Only 2 charges left. He looked around for anything useful. There was an old security locker in the corner. He opened it. Inside was a sleek, forgotten energy blade. He smiled. Now we're talking. Larry sat down beside the orb and closed her eyes. She began to chant in her native language. The orb started glowing brighter and brighter. Jake stood between her and the entrance, weapon in one hand, energy blade in the other. And then, footsteps. Lots of them. The collectors had arrived. The final defense had begun. The lower chamber was quiet, but only for a breath. Above them, the sealed hatch began to shake under the weight of footsteps, heavy, slow, and full of dark purpose. The collectors had found their way down. Jake stood firm in front of Leary, energy, blade in one hand, plasma pistol in the other. His eyes didn't blink. His heartbeat was calm, too calm for a man moments away from death. Behind him, Leary sat cross-legged beside the glowing soul-fire orb. Her eyes were closed, her hands glowing as she chanted softly in her native language. Symbols of light floated around her body, spinning faster and faster. The orb was responding, pulsing with a heartbeat that grew louder. Thump, thump, thump. Jake didn't understand the alien words, but he understood the meaning. She was becoming something more. Suddenly, crash. The top hatch exploded open. 3 collectors dropped down with a thunderous impact. Their black armor shimmered with red lights. Their eyes glowed like burning coals. One of them growled in a voice that sounded part machine, part nightmare. Step away from the girl, human. Jake didn't move. He looked at Larry, then turned back to them. Come and get her, they charged. Jake fired his last 2 plasma shots. One hit the lead collector's helmet, cracking it. The other missed. He dropped the pistol and raised the energy blade just in time to block a swing. The first impact threw him backward, but he landed hard and rolled to his feet. The blade hummed in his hand. One collector rushed again. Jake slashed. Crack. The blade cut deep into the enemy's armor, sending sparks flying. The creature screamed and fell. The second one came at him with a shock baton. Jake dodged barely. The baton grazed his shoulder, sending a jolt of pain through his arm. But Jake didn't fall. He roared and drove the energy blade through the enemy's chest plate. 2 down. 1 to go. The final collector was bigger than the others. His mask was cracked, revealing gray skin and a cruel mouth. He lifted Jake by the neck and slammed him into the wall. Jake gasped for air. His vision blurred. Below him, Leary cried out, "Jake!" The soulfire orb flashed with light. Something inside her snapped. She stood up, her body now glowing bright blue. Her voice was no longer soft, it thundered. Leave him. The collector turned his head, and Jake used the chance. He pulled a hidden blade from his boot and stabbed upward into the collector's throat. The creature dropped him, choking. Jake fell to the floor, coughing, bleeding, but alive. The collector stumbled, reached out, and then collapsed. Silence. Jake forced himself up, blood running from his lip. Leary ran to him. She dropped to her knees, eyes full of tears. You didn't let them take me," she whispered. Jake gave a weak smile. "Wasn't going to let them have you." She held his face in her hands. "You're hurt." "I've been worse." The soulfire orb floated up, now fully awake. It spun in the air and sent out a shockwave of soft light. Leary turned to it. "I'm ready," she whispered. "I choose him." The orb pulsed once, then dissolved into glowing light and sank into Leary's chest. She gasped, then stood taller. Jake looked up at her, amazed. "You changed." Leary nodded. "I feel everything now. My people's hopes, their pain, their love. And I feel you." Jake touched her hand. "What now?" Leary looked toward the ceiling where the hatch had been blown open. "Now we finish this. Together." Jake smiled, even though he could barely stand. I liked the sound of that. The soulfire orb had vanished. Its light now lived inside Leary. She stood in the ruined lab, glowing like a star. Her silver hair floated gently around her, her body surrounded by rings of pale blue light. She no longer looked fragile, no longer lost. She looked like a queen of galaxies. Jake stood beside her, blood on his face, his shoulder burned, but still holding his blade. His knees were weak, but his eyes were clear. He had never seen anything more beautiful, or more dangerous. "More will come," he said, breathless. "You lit up the whole station." Leary nodded. "Let them. I'm ready." Just then, the ground shook. From above, a massive ship docked. The dark shape of a collector war cruiser now loomed over the station like a death shadow. Engines roared. Airlocks burst. Dozens of black-armored collectors began flooding in. Jake cursed. "That's too many." Leary turned to him, calm. "Then I'll give them a reason to be afraid." She raised her hands, and the entire room glowed with soulfire light. A wave of bright energy pulsed out, breaking walls, blowing open doors. Every sensor on the ship above began to scream. Lights shorted out. Systems failed. The enemy didn't understand. They thought they were hunting a girl. They had awoken a goddess. Leary stepped forward. Every step echoed like thunder. Jake followed. Her. Every part of him hurt, but he didn't care. On the upper deck, collectors waited with weapons drawn. But the moment Leary rose into view, the lights around them went dark. Then her eyes lit up. 2 suns and the soulfire released. A wave of force slammed into the soldiers, knocking them backward like leaves in a storm. Walls cracked. Metal tore. The station shook. Jake fired one last charge into the enemy line, then raised his blade and charged. Beside him, Leary walked through the chaos untouched. She wasn't fighting them with weapons. She was fighting them with will. One collector reached for her, yelling something in an alien tongue. Leary raised her hand. "You hunted my people. Now, feel what we felt." A beam of blue-white light shot out and the enemy disintegrated into dust. Jake watched, stunned. The girl who once whispered, "Can I sleep next to you?" had now become a storm in human shape. Finally, the last of the collectors fell, smoke filled the air. Fires burned across the station, and in the middle of it all stood Leary and Jake, breathing, alive. Jake dropped his blade and fell to one knee. Leary turned quickly. "Jake!" He looked up at her, smiling. "Don't worry, just tired." She knelt and wrapped her arms around him. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. Jake leaned into her shoulder. "You didn't. I told you, I stay." She pulled back and looked at him, her glowing light beginning to fade. "I have to leave this place. I have to rebuild my people. The soulfire is awake now. My destiny is calling." Jake nodded slowly. "I know," She bit her lip. But I don't want to leave you behind. He took her hand. You don't have to. Larry's eyes widened. You'll come with me? Jake smiled. You once asked if you could sleep next to me. Just for one night. But I think maybe we were never meant to be just for a night. Larry's voice cracked. Then, can I stay with you, Jake? Forever? Jake didn't answer. He leaned forward and kissed her gently, soft, real. A moment that no war could break. When they pulled apart, the soul fire inside Leary glowed once more, brighter, calmer. And in that moment, the galaxy changed. Not because of a weapon, not because of a war, but because one human made an alien girl feel safe. And that safety became love.